Hello, this is Ori from Stairway to Hebrew, and I decided to have weekly or bi-weekly videos about not only Hebrew but about Jewish culture and Israeli culture. So today I wanted to talk about the time that we're in Israel. It's springtime. We just finished the holiday of spring, Passover, Pesach, and now starts a holiday season that we call the national holiday season, Chagim HaLeumiyim. So the upcoming holiday, I record this on April 4th, 2021, and 3 days from now, 4 days from now, we mention Yom Hazikaron, Lashoאה ולגבורה, the Remembrance Day of the Holocaust and Heroism, or Yom HaShoah, the Holocaust Day. And if you don't know about the Holocaust, you can just Google it. You don't need me to talk about it. I want to talk about a specific aspect about the Holocaust Day. You probably know or remember that there is an International Holocaust Day, and the International Holocaust Day takes place on January 27th, and now we're in April. So why is there a different day for International Holocaust Day and the Israeli Holocaust Day? I will just mention that up until like a few years ago, I didn't know that there was an International Holocaust Day. Like, it's not so much mentioned in Israel as the Israeli Holocaust Day. And I will talk about what's the difference between the two and why we mention one over the other, and what's the meaning of this day in Israel. So the International Holocaust Day is January 27th. It mentions the day where the Soviet Red Army liberated Auschwitz. So it's a very important day, obviously, and because in Auschwitz it was the biggest death camp where more than 2 million people lost their lives, were killed, innocent people. Most of them were Jews, not only, but most of them were Jews. So the liberation of this camp is a very meaningful day, of course. But when Israel was founded, it was founded on the idea that the Jews can fight for themselves and liberate themselves. We don't need other people to assist us. We can fight for our own lives. So Israel decided that they would have a different day to mention the Holocaust in Israel. So they decided on the day where there was a Jewish uprising in the ghetto of Warsaw in Poland in 1943. And they also didn't do it, they didn't decide on a date which was on the civil calendar, like January 27th, but on the Jewish calendar, which is a different one from the civil or Christian calendar. So it's mentioned on 27th of Nisan, which is a Jewish calendar, the seventh Jewish month. So instead of choosing the International Day where the Soviet army released Auschwitz, or liberated Auschwitz, we chose a day where Jews fought for themselves. So in Israel, this day is called, as I said, the Remembrance Day for the Holocaust. Shoah in Hebrew is Holocaust, and Gvura, heroism. The problem with that was that many Holocaust survivors who came to Israel in the 40s and 50s and 60s, if they didn't take part in combat, in fighting the Nazis, in the partisan movement, in anything like that, they felt embarrassed or ashamed, really, for surviving. Like they had a survival guilt, and they didn't share their stories even with their families. Like, they had new families, they remarried, or they found husbands and wives, and had a family, but they couldn't talk about their stories because Israel didn't encourage people to tell a story of I was a victim and all my family was killed and I couldn't do anything about it. So the heroism aspect of the Remembrance Day of the Holocaust and heroism made many people silent. But after a generation, especially specifically after 2 generations where Holocaust survivors could talk to their grandchildren about it, the word heroism changed its meaning in a way to small acts of grace, which were very big. Because if someone had his last piece of bread in a camp, in a concentration camp, and he didn't eat it to give it to and he gave it to his friend, that was an act of heroism, an act of grace. So with time, like specifically in this like 70s, 80s, 90s, and so on, people realized how the Holocaust was really a difficult time, like extremely difficult. It wasn't only people who got killed, it was just unbearable, livelihood. So people realized that heroism was not only, fighting in combat and picking up a gun and go to fight, but also just hiding someone in your basement, knowing that you might be killed by the Nazis if they knew, or giving a piece of bread or giving a piece of clothing, or just even like telling a joke, is an act of heroism in those dark days. So actually in Israel, we, as I said, we mentioned not the International Day but the Israeli Day, and in that day, we, like the Israeli Holocaust Day, we have ceremonies. We have 2 minutes of siren where we stand up and we mourn for the dead. All the coffee houses and restaurants and recreational places are closed, and it's a day of remembrance. So I want you to tell me in the comments if you have a story related either to the Holocaust or even to a hero in your life, either a big hero who fought in a war, or someone who did like small acts of heroism, of grace, to help somebody else go through the day. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video. Bye bye.